Hi, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Wise Wednesday. My guest today, we have these Wednesdays conversations that we have with you every second Wednesday of the month. And I am so excited to bring the next author and the next book. And also, it means a lot of prep. So, I would like you guys to go and read the book and not just go and listen to this conversation. This is Aarti Kelshikar's book, How Women Work, Fitting in and Standing Out in Asia. Aarti, welcome to the Wise Wednesday, and I'm so happy we are having this conversation.
Thank you, Deepa. Lovely to be here. Thanks so much. And I'm absolutely looking forward to our conversation as well.
Aarti, we met thanks to Rajiv Narayanan, and I'm always looking for women and men writing about women and work and women in business. And when I saw about this book, How Women Work, I was also fascinated by this, this graph, this cover. And I was, of course, very, very curious on how this book came about. And we've had a few conversations, but we should let the listeners experience this joy of the behind the scenes is what Wise Wednesday is also a little bit about, getting behind the scenes of the making of the book. So Aarti, if you can begin at the beginning. You have traveled around the world, you have lived in many countries, and you bring your wisdom of being a culture coach to understanding how women work. And I think that is again a very, very interesting space that I want us to explore in our conversation. And of course, welcome back to Mumbai, your city.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Uh, so, if I have to go back and, kind of rewind a little bit before we go forward, um, I think the book came to be, because of the space that I was in, right? I mean, as you mentioned, I work in the space of leadership and culture coaching. And that also was, I just accidentally stumbled into that space. I used to work in regulatory compliance, which feels like, many, many years ago now.
Lifetimes ago.
Yeah, really, many moons ago. So anyway, so I moved into this space. We were in a different country outside India, and I got certified and did a lot of trainings, etc. And basically started getting, into that space, right? Immersed into that space. I read everything I could, lay my hands on. There are lots of books. It's very, very interesting, that space. And we moved back to Mumbai in 2012. And for various reasons, people would ask questions about, how India works or how it doesn't, and how it is to work with Indians. And that's what led me to writing my first book,
Yes.
which is called How India Works, Making Sense of a Complex Corporate Culture. And so that book was very close to my heart, and it was something that I think, I was so passionate about writing that one. And frankly, I think from there, I haven't really moved, I haven't looked back, right? So if you look at the common thread between that book and this one, other than the title, okay, which is, I think, intentional on the part of the publisher, the one common thread between both the books is the cultural angle. So this book is not just about the usual look at women in leadership and women in business, etc., etc., but it is also seen through a cultural lens, which is what really makes the book interesting, gives it a nuanced layer and depth. So I brought my intercultural lens, my interest in looking at how women work in different places, against the cultural, social, context, right? And it's different across Asia. So I had to kind of look at a few countries, be able to do justice to it, instead of just and do it very generically or very broadly. So I looked at 6 countries, which are India, Singapore, China, Japan, Thailand, and the Philippines. and looked at how women and men, it was also nice to talk to men and
Yeah.
get them to weigh in and give their perspective on how women lead. And wherever possible, I've tried to connect the dots. And so basically look at that, and I think that has been a very interesting, a very refreshingly different take, if you will, on this book. But that's how it started, and that's been the journey.
And your each of your 12 chapters, I mean, everything. I love the book also because your choice of words, sometimes, it could have been said in a different way, but the way you say it is so punchy, and it's so tongue in cheek. I love the humor you brought into your writing, and
Yeah,
it's not a pedantic, serious book. It's a very sincere and from the heart book. That's also what I thought. It really balanced the head and heart for me. And I've, like, many notes and many markings.
yeah,
Um, and the characters, the way you use, even the uh, you've used a structure where you've compared what it is to work within a country with a multinational culture from time to time, to
yeah,
contrast and compare and make out the differences. And you talk about somewhere bringing a whole experience to somebody as a professional. I mean, man woman aside, but bringing a whole perspective. uh,
yes.
so even for you to kind of bring that insider outsider lens when you were going between looking at India and then other countries, I mean, how does your mind work? How do you sort of compartmentalize cultures? I just want to understand, how the it must be so interesting to get into your mind. That's what I mean.
uh, so it's honestly, it's that's how I had conceptualized the book, and the first book is also on similar lines in terms of the fact that it's thematic. So in the first book, many of the themes that you picked up probably in this book also, which are around hierarchy and relationships and things like that. So in the first book also I talk about many of those aspects that are of course uniquely prevalent in the Indian ecosystem. And so again, I've used a similar lens in terms of saying, okay, these are some of my observations, my experiences. Um, Sometimes I've brought in a different experience, by a reader from a reader's perspective, or sometimes it's an experience that is similar and validates what I'm saying. So I think once you kind of, as an author, have clarity on where you want to go, and where you want to take the narrative, the rest is then easy, because it's fun, because you also want to say, you kind of pick and choose, and I had so much of material, I can't tell you. So I had to kind of literally look at it and say, okay, what is it that I really want to use? Because as you said, I have a I mean, I have my own perspective in terms of what I like and what I would like to bring and share. And I like to look at things in a slightly um, almost self-deprecatory manner. I don't take myself very seriously as a person. I want to bring in a bit of humor. I want to bring in a bit of fun wherever possible. So when you look at it from that angle and that perspective, then it's kind of easy, because even when you're doing the interviews, there are some portions, as the person is talking, you say, yes, this is great, I'm going to use it. You know that, and then when you come back to it, you take it out and you use it, and of course then you play around with it. And I don't know, I mean, hundreds and hundreds of iterations, literally,
Yeah.
because you're just never happy with how it looks today. I mean, it could look great today, and then tomorrow you're like, okay, let me redo this entire chapter. So I did a lot of that. So with the end result being that it becomes, sharper, finer. You put in a word here, you put in a word there. You kind of just bring it together, connect the dots, and hope that people will enjoy it. For me, there were two main objectives, of for the book, for the reader. I wanted it to be insightful, and I wanted it to be interesting. Those two objectives that were very, very key to me and my writing and my ethos. So as long as I'm able to balance that, and as long as I'm able to kind of deliver that in some manner, shape, or form, I'm happy. And I think that has been achieved. Yeah.
In
Yeah.
fact, starting with, you have dedicated this to your father, Dilip Patarfikar, who lived and led with love and laughter. And through the book, the love for your work and the ability to laugh at, the quirks of culture, and,
Yeah.
and just it does that in full measure. When you talk about even, the comparison and the contrast, I, for example, loved the part where you say money in for women in China and for women in Thailand is a core part of management. And that's also something which I wasn't aware of. It was very interesting and very empowering, to sort
Yes.
of read that and then draw the arc to say why women work the way they do in these countries. And it's
Yes.
very interesting.
Yeah, and that was also the point, because we kind of live in our own little silo land, sometimes, we kind of, you know, people aren't always aware of some of these nuances, the reasons, the cultural realities, the historical realities, all of that, right? And I felt that it would, be interesting uh, to look at how women work through that lens, because then it gives you a deeper understanding and an appreciation, in terms of, okay, everybody's got their challenges and everybody's got their issues, but what is unique about, their particular aspect, and look how well they have, come up and done things, and through those stories and lessons and anecdotes, can we learn something as well?
In fact, you celebrate. Of
Yes.
course, you call things out. You talk about the need, for even a little bit of the way your chapter closes to say what are some of the key takeaways. You've got that as a structure through all your 12, chapters.
Yes.
So there is like a ready, sort of a quick glance.
Yeah.
Uh, when you were writing, I mean, because there was so much material, what are some of those parts that were really hard to sort of take away and that you needed to, for the sake of brevity? And does that mean that there is another book in the making, which could be maybe one culture, about one country or one culture or one lens or one thematic area?
Mm, so I don't think there is, because I think I'd like to write on a different topic. Okay, so that's
Okay,
the short answer to your question. Uh,
but
you know,
you write, that's important.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. But I don't think I want to write, again on the same theme
Got it.
immediately, maybe a little, uh, some time down the line. Um, but in terms of, frankly, whatever I have retained in the book is stuff that needed to be in the book and that I
Yeah.
wanted to retain. So it wasn't tough to, it's not like I said, oh, I wish I could include some more stuff, because I could very well have. The book isn't that thick, as you've
No,
noticed,
it's
so
not. That's why I was asking, because it's
yeah,
a crisp, trim book,
yeah, yeah,
and it's very taut reading. It flows well,
yeah.
and it doesn't feel like it's much. It's like,
No,
it's
no.
rich. 230 pages is what you have there, and it's also a breezy read. I do want us not to talk about the good women of Asia at some time. I do
Yeah.
want to.
Right, right. So, no, so I do think that what has worked well has been, I've taken portions of what I felt was relevant and then made it very tight and succinct, you know, because I really didn't want to bore people. And, didn't want, I was very conscious of that, as a person, in terms of, because I realized that there were so many people that I didn't want someone to get lost in this whole narrative,
Yeah,
right?
it's very skillfully done, Aarti.
Yeah,
Very skillful.
yeah, thank you. And I think, it's skill, but I think a lot of time and effort has also gone in,
Sure.
because I didn't, as I said, I was careful and very conscious of that, because, otherwise it's very easy to get lost in that, right? I mean,
Perfection gene.
uh, only when I'm writing, not otherwise.
Tell our listeners about the perfection gene and women.
Oh God. So I think that's a common thread, right? A lot of women have that. And I think they want to for whatever reasons, I think in a lot of societies, because the default leadership model is male, right? In so many ways, whether you like it or you don't. So I think women feel the pressure, feel the heat, perhaps, and then they want to, do things, to match that standard. They don't want to be they don't want to be less in any way, and which is good, because as long as it ups the game, I think it works very well, whether you're a guy or whether you're a woman. But the problem is that we tend to overdo it, and we tend to be we lose the fun uh, of the process, in while going down that attention to detail, and while having that, while that's a good thing, I think we sometimes miss the woods for the trees, and things
Yeah.
like that. So I think it's very important to be cognizant of that, and that is perhaps where a sense of inner security
Yes.
is needed, and if one doesn't have so much of it, to be able to recognize that and to work on that. It's not like it's easy. I don't think any of us is born with it. There is no manual. There's no machine to kind of make that, but it's important, and I have seen people rise above it and grow and become more confident, and less picky and less anal, if you will. Yeah.
When you write about Japan and the women working in Japan, you also talk about how women are naturally more comfortable working in multinational organizations as opposed to Japanese organizations. And
Yeah.
you this element of this stark contrast between Indian company and multinational company, you found that primarily in Japan, and was it significantly lesser in other cultures
uh,
vis-a-vis women
yeah.
leadership and management?
So I did think it was, Japan is a very interesting outlier, really, when it comes to leadership and empowerment in Asia. And so everything is certainly more pronounced, I felt, in Japan. That said, this was a common thread across all countries, including India, right? In terms of, the multinational and Indian companies, and how women feel working with them, and I think mainly because of the fact that multinational organizations tend to give that space for women to be and for them to speak their mind, right? So people tend to feel a little more comfortable. Again, you have to take it with a pinch of salt, as we know, and it really depends across leadership, across the senior leadership teams, and the cultures of the organization. But in general, I did think that this was something that was said repeatedly by everybody in all the 6 countries, that, oh, we're much happier working in multinationals because the cultural nuances, the conditioning is far more pronounced in our local company, whichever country.
Yeah, and it's something I think there are so many such little nuggets for people to be even on a watch out or a lookout for,
Yeah.
because these could be blind spots. These
Yes.
could be things that we are culturally also blind to, as
Yes.
from a very insider lens, you could miss these out. So, I really thought this book is the stuff of workshops.
Okay. Right.
There is a place where you talk about ambition, and you say, when you compare one your success with your peers, that lens for ambition is very view of ambition is very unidimensional and self-limiting. And you go on to say, and this is Dr. Rohini Srivasta's quote: women who are secure can move beyond this. And I think it's a very, in your chapter Courage and Control, I thought this was a very, very important point, and you've again summarized it as well. You want us to just talk a little bit about this piece, because you must have ambition, but it can't freeze you. It needs to propel you and to move you forward. So I thought it was an interesting one there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, ambition, of course, is great to have, and there is no downside really in that sense, right? But I mean, I think it's totally necessary for women to have, especially. But you know, as long as one is not insecure about it, as long as one is not always in a rat race and comparing, and as long as you do better, right? It's your best version of yourself. And I
Yes.
think that's so important, because otherwise, again, one is doing it for not the right reasons, right? And one is not enjoying the process. For me, I think that's a big one, because in any case, work and the pressures of work in today's lives, right, in today's day and age, where there's so much stress at every level, do we really want to increase and add to that level of stress by sitting and saying, okay, so and so is now VP and so is now CEO, and look at me, I'm languishing in whatever capacity. I mean, let's give ourselves a pat on our backs. Let's celebrate, our success. And success for everybody is so different, right? What could be successful for me may not be something that will be successful for you. So let's not get that pedantic, and let's look at it, from a larger lens, and enjoy life and living.
You also talk about women are not strategic in the way they manage their career.
Yeah.
So, you want to just tell our listeners a little bit about this?
Yeah, so this was an interesting one, because a lot of the men felt this particularly, whether this was somebody in Japan or China or the Philippines or Singapore or India. Uh, Most men had this to say about their women colleagues, that they felt that women weren't strategic enough. And of course, I don't mean to say that every woman is like that or anything like that, but I thought it was interesting enough and meaty enough a point to, warrant some sort of thinking around that. I think what I mean and what was meant in this by this is that we don't always look ahead, right? People
Hmm.
are very happy in the here and the now. Okay, I'm
Hmm.
doing this job, I am in this role. Um, so why bother? Why upset the apple cart? Things are good. But the point is that, you have to look ahead, you have to think a little bit ahead, so that you can start planning your next move. You can start preparing for your next move, and skilling and reskilling, and it's not going to just magically happen. So that is one thing in terms of looking a little ahead. The other piece is also about networking and finding allies and advocates, and doing it strategically. Because again, as we know, and I'm sure you've seen a lot of that, is that a lot of women feel, oh, I don't have the time to network. uh,
Hmm.
what is meant by networking is not necessarily exchanging cards in like a room full of 100 people, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, you can just be a part of an organization. You can be have a position like a treasurer or a secretary or whatever, and do some meaningful work at the same time. Have some meaningful connections that will come your way useful at a later date, right? But to be able to think that ahead, that, let me start investing, in other people. Let me start investing a little bit in relationships. Yeah. So I think these things don't always come naturally to women,
Yeah.
and it's important to be a little more deliberate, a little bit, plan uh, around these areas, uh, only to complement women's success,
Yeah. No, I think it's very important. In fact, what you've also got here are these little, like a toolkit.
Yeah.
I thought that was really nice. These little what's
Bag.
in her bag tools to
Yeah.
navigate.
Yeah.
Uh, so, in your chapter, The Good Women of Asia, you've got adapt to dynamics, self confidence, be calm and carry on, and don't try to please everyone. So,
Yeah.
what I found so interesting is you have these, like, you have a lot of stuff in terms of individual stories by
Yeah.
the leaders. You've got perspective, you've got these little succinct things. So a readers of different type, different types of readers have something in it for them, is what I
Yes.
felt. It's a very accessible book for
Yeah.
even somebody who's a bit of a breezy reader.
Yes, absolutely. Because again, like it's like what I told you, right? I started off with that objective of mine, which was A, to be insightful, but B, to also make it interesting. So I didn't want it to be one of those jargony books, with the usual stuff that's written in women's books without any disrespect meant, yeah. Because this, frankly, there have been a lot of books, and I didn't want to just add to that. I wanted it to be relevant and being able to add some sort of value and also some sort of fun. So these bags were actually, just as a small note aside, they were actually something that I wanted to do, and I told my daughter, I asked her, I said, would you be able to draw it? And she initially laughed her head off. She said, I mean, you're writing this serious book on women and leadership, and you want me to draw these bags? And I said, listen, let's just try it. What do we lose? If it looks horrible, the publisher will anyway take it out, you know. And I could have gone with the publisher and with their artist, but I so wanted it to be, done from our side in a way that we controlled the narrative in the way that I conceptualized it. And Anushka did a fantastic job. I mean, she just used some software, and within a day, these cute drawings were done. And yeah, the rest is history. I mean, I think people have liked it because also wanted it to be like a little visual, to break the monotony of a book that is not heavy, but at the same time has a lot of material. So I thought visually also, you need to break the monotony a little bit.
And maybe while we are closing, I hate to have to close this, but in maybe in about 4 minutes we'll be done. I do want you to talk about what you thought might also be at the title of the book, The Good Women of Asia. So, what is this? What was about the good? And I thought that was a very telling, very important part of your book.
Yeah, no, it's such an important part of the whole culture, the cultural fabric of Asia, right? I mean, where we all want to be good women, we want to be good moms and daughters-in-law, and in addition to being good employees and career women, etc., right? So, and because Asia has so many of these expectations and perceptions, it was just a very integral part of the book and the narrative to kind of see, okay, these are some expectations, and how have women worked around these to still be good, although, in their own way, right? So to bring their own imprint to whatever good means in their world. So to be able to stand up for themselves, and in order to perhaps even redefine what is meant by good. So I just thought that was an important part of something. I didn't want to. I actually initially wanted to start with that. That was going to be my first chapter, but then I felt it might be a bit too somber, to start
Yeah.
off with. So I said, let's put it later on, and at the same time. Then you have all those different contrasts from Japan to the Philippines and China and India. So it's interesting also to hear those anecdotes.
So you've written over here in Good Women, Women of Asia, behind each Chinese woman, there is at least 200 years of her history, legacy, and culture, and one can see the different generations imprint on them. And I
That's
wanted to add, behind each Indian woman,
yeah.
there is at least a 5,000 years of history, legacy, and culture, and I couldn't resist myself from saying that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. In fact, I wanted to also make a similar point, but then I didn't want it to be, I wanted to leave it there, for others to take away, because it wasn't just about India and China, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, absolutely, your point is well taken. Yeah.
So I know I normally talk about this even earlier, but your writing process, I didn't sort of spend any time on it. This is your second book. Was the writing process for this book different from the first one? How India works? How does maturing as an author when you're doing your second book change your approach to writing? How do you make it work for you better? Did you make any changes?
Yeah, I think I could feel the difference. I mean, A, there's a confidence, and B, there's a lucidity in this book, which wasn't there as much in the first. For sure, I think I kind of came into my own a little more in this book, and I enjoyed the process. And I said, frankly, there were times when I didn't even know where I was going to go, with all this stuff, right? Because it had to finally come together well. And I wasn't sure. There were a lot of moments of, not being sure. But I said, let me just trust myself and let me trust the process. So I think there has been a maturity, there has been a level of confidence. I think I evolved as a writer, and the fact that I made so many iterations, really helped, because it's not like, I'm one of those you can just write and get it. I think very few people get it right the first time round, so I think it takes a while, and I think it's, if for anyone who's writing out there, I think you have to be able to have the persistence and the patience to kind of keep looking at it, at a draft, and saying, how can I make this better today? I think that's very important. And I think that is something that is um, irreplaceable, and very, very key to my work, at least.
I want to hear a little bit. I can't resist the next work.
Oh, Deepa, I don't know. I mean, I know that I will write in this space. It would be in the space of leadership and culture, right? Because this is my comfort zone. A friend was telling me the other day that, why don't you write fiction? I mean, bahut ho gaya. You've been writing all this non-fiction and everything. But fiction requires a level of creativity which I don't think I possess. And also, as a person, I'm quite happy to be in this thing, where the borders are defined, the framework is defined, and then you have to stick to this, and then you can work within these walls, so to speak. So I'm quite sure it won't be fiction, but it would, I'll have to find something again interesting within uh, these areas, broadly. Yeah, but I'm quite keen and quite open. So if you have any ideas, do let me.
Yes. So, all of you listening, those of you who will read the book, must come back to Aarti and say, now we want her to write about this. I was very keen for her to write something more on Japanese culture, Japanese way of working, because that culture just fascinates me. So I was very, very keen. Like India works, how Japan works, kind of a thought was what came to my mind. But
Yeah.
for all of us, we can have our wish list so we can keep Aarti busy for a few years.
How sweet. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, Japan is absolutely fascinating.
So, Aarti, to the viewers, you can just tell them why they need to get hold of their copy of your book, How Women Work, Fitting In and Standing Out. And why did you have to put that byline of fitting in and standing out in Asia?
Because that to me is the definitive uh, theme across the book. I mean, that is what makes the book different, and it's like the underlying common thread across all these women that I spoke to. And the reason why we put fitting in and standing out and not yet standing out is itself telling, because it's about how these women are seamlessly able to fit in and stand out. So it's not about doing one before the other. And therein lies the ability to straddle complexity, right, of a totally different order in Asia. And so I was very keen about, and I think that itself is another whole other conversation, about standing out in Asia. But yeah, I think for anybody who wants to, enjoy, have a good read, learn a little bit, hear some and learn some interesting stories and examples, enjoy a fun read in this monsoon. I think this is a great book in terms of not being too serious, at the same time giving you something to think about in terms of your own working style, your own ambition, your own, um, aspirations, your own journey, and I think a lot of people have told me that it's not about uh, I haven't given like formulas or sound bites in terms of saying, okay, these are three things that you have to do and then you'll be a super success. I think you pick and choose what works for you and what speaks to you from the book, and I think that can be very powerful. So good luck to everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, so this for me is like having a little mirror with a sunlight shining on it, and it makes many small rainbows on the wall. So each of these, this book is like that. You can there is that playful quality to it. You can pick any chapter and read.
Yeah.
um, Aarti Kelshikar, an absolute delight talking to you. It's a privilege and an honor to have you on our Wise Wednesday. And I hope uh, our conversation reaches far and wide, and many, many, many people are interested, intrigued, and inspired to buy your book, read your book. So, and wish you all the best for everything that you will do going forward. And
Thank you.
thank you to your daughter for that marvelous piece of work she's done.
Yeah, yeah. No, thank you so much. Absolutely, really enjoyed our conversation, and it's also feels really nice at the way you've looked at the little small things and dissected them and bisected them. Because uh, it's always nice to be appreciated by someone who knows what they're doing and who really loves books as much as you do. So thanks, Deepa.
Thank you, Aarti. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for watching, and do subscribe to our channel Lumière Light and Insight. Lots and lots of interesting stuff there with authors, Wise Wednesdays, as well as the Learning Mondays. So thanks again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.